Have you ever dreamed of building the career and life you truly want, but felt unsure where to start? The Career Capital Collective podcast with Sarah Robson and Kaylee Gaspari is your blueprint for success, offering actionable advice on navigating career pivot. Join us in redefining success on your own terms. Hi, guys, and welcome back to the Career Capital Collective podcast. We're your hosts, Kaylee Gaspari
and Sarah Robson.
All right, so we have a pretty exciting, real, raw, and vulnerable episode for you guys today. I'm going to be interviewing Sarah, and we're going to be talking about change, loss, and rebuilding, specifically focusing on Sarah's journey, which she's going to get into. So, Sarah, can you set the tone a little bit more in detail around what we're going to talk about?
Yeah, 2025, looking back at it, was just so messy. There's a lot of things that happened that are big changes, some that I chose for myself and some that were chosen for me. And I am sharing my story really at a point where I think personally I'm in one of my lowest points, but I'm sharing this because I think it'll also help me move forward, and also want to kind of share not just like the highlight reel that I've been sharing on Instagram forever. And like life is ups and downs, and some downs happened, but I'm moving forward and onwards and upwards.
Well, I, for one, appreciate you being like so open and vulnerable and honest. You know, Sarah and I have been chatting about some of the biggest lessons that we've learned in our lives and what has been most impactful for us, what really pushed us into the next chapters. And so we don't want to just always be sharing positive stories, but also some of the hardships and how we've moved through them, because sometimes the hardest lessons to learn are the ones that really shape you into who you are. So appreciate what you're doing, Sarah. And thank you so much for being open and vulnerable with us.
This is honestly really hard to do. I've debated not sharing this for a really long time, but I think as part of my own like healing process, it'll be helpful to share. I just want to preface with that yeah.
Let's jump in. And if there's any time that you want to pivot or you don't feel comfortable, just let me know. Can you give us a little context around like what essentially happened? Like what was your starting point that led up to kind of like this big change?
Yeah. I did the Hoffman process, which was a really transformational 1-week program. For those that aren't familiar, the Hoffman Institute is a place I went in Petaluma, California, and it's a place where you learn about your negative patterns, you identify them, and you learn new ways of being. It's kind of like a intense therapy, not rehab, but more of just like an intense therapy for a week. You get really close with the people that are in your program, and it is extremely transformational. So I came out of that program feeling honestly pretty good. And then a couple of months later, I got a job offer at a growth equity fund in San Francisco. And this was a firm that I had been interviewing with for about 3 years, and was so pumped about the job offer and just like, wow, everything's really, really like aligning. So I started that job in June 2023. My role was head of investor relations and marketing for the fund. And I was living in LA at the time, and then it was remote for the summer. So we went back in office in September, and I moved to San Francisco, September 2023. My sister lives in San Francisco. I do have like a decent base, but I didn't have that many friends. I got like a really awesome apartment that was in the marina, for those familiar with San Francisco. And my first night out in the city, I met my ex-boyfriend. Literally first night out after like disastrous 2 years of dating in LA. Prior to that, I was like, wow, San Francisco showing off. This is just way easier than LA. But yeah, met my ex-boyfriend, and then also reconnected with you, Kaylee, which was awesome. And honestly, things are really great. Things were like, felt like they were really soaring. The job was going well. Relationship was going well. And so that was like a year of things going honestly pretty great. Right. Was learning a lot in the job. Then around December 2024, I really wanted to move in with my ex-boyfriend.
Mm.
I have previously lived with two prior boyfriends. For me, it's like a rite of passage before the next step. And I was comfortable doing that. He was not ready. He is a couple of years younger and wasn't ready to move in. So we discussed, like, do we stay together? Do we break up? Like, what happens from here? I did get an opportunity with work to move back to Los Angeles around
Hmm.
this exact same time. So when he wasn't ready, I was like, all right, so you're not ready, and I'm going to move back to LA, but we're going to do long distance instead of breaking up.
So I guess my question to you is, Sarah, like, when your partner wasn't ready to make the move, like, why did you decide to still go to LA? Where did that come from?
I felt like I moved to San Francisco before my LA chapter was over. I had only been in LA for like about 2 years, and I just had built all my friends up, and I wasn't really ready to leave. And so when he wasn't ready, I was like, okay, well, then I'm going to do my own thing
Right.
instead of breaking up. We could have broken up. We weren't ready to like break up at that point. And then with the work opportunity, it was like, okay. And by the way, we did long distance, and I traveled to San Francisco like almost every other weekend. Because he wasn't ready, it was me then advocating for myself to
Right.
then do what I was going to do, as opposed to just like waiting around, which I don't know if you've ever been in a situation like this, but like waiting for your partner to be ready, feel like you're dragging them along for the next step. It's just painful.
Yeah. And it's not good for either party, right? Like, it is cliche, but people say, like, if they wanted to, they would, right? Like, I think
Yeah.
I've had situations where I was in a similar situation, like I wasn't ready or they were more ready. Like, it's not any fault of the other person, but it's like if there isn't that fit there, it can feel like, hey, here I want to go move forward with my life, and there's some resentment that can build there. So, what happened after that? Like, so you're in LA now.
So I'm in LA doing long distance. Things were like still actually going pretty well considering it was long distance. And then fast forward to September of this year, and I learned that I would be losing my job at the end of the year. So it's not like just losing a job as an American. This is like more complicated. So for those that are on work visas, they would understand that like you lose your job in the US, you lose your ability to work.
Yeah.
And I also like was losing my green card application that was like 2+ years in process, but it wasn't far enough along to like ship it to another company. So
Right.
I learned that this was going to be happening, but my green card process wouldn't be far enough along. And then also like my H-1B, I've used up all of the days. So it's honestly was just like a huge blow. So I did work for the next 3 months, but I knew that this would be my time at the firm would be ending. And in that time period, it also put additional stress on the relationship for sure. Because transparently, like I am at a place where like I am ready to settle down. And after dating for a few years, like for me, this is just like, all right, we're either like it's all in or all out. There's no like more waiting time in my view. I mean, if I was a couple years younger, maybe I would think differently, but I'm like ready to like get started with life. And I feel like
Mhm.
things we're just like taking a lot more time. So I would say like the added strain of like the job situation and the visa, for me, I was just like, all right, it's either like do or die, given like the added complexity of like the work visa situation and all that. So in October, we broke up. And then in December, a couple of weeks ago, I left my job. And so I am currently in this process now where I'm figuring out what's next. I mean, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I've always wanted to work for myself. The direction right now is looking like starting my own business and funding my own visa for the US and funding it myself so that I'm not reliant on a firm to sponsor my visa. And then I'm essentially choosing my like destination as opposed to kind of relying on a company. But
Right.
making this decision, I feel like there's like a paradox of choice. I'm like, okay, do I move to London? Do I move back to Toronto? Do I like double down in LA? It's been like a really hard decision. And then also, I think just with the breakup, genuinely getting over the breakup has been like so much harder than I would have thought. I like honestly thought that I would be a lot more fine considering I'm the one that ended it. But I think it's not personal, but it feels personal that he's not ready. Cause I'm like, well, if I was like your person, you would just lock it down. And it definitely like plays on my, I'm not good enough heartstrings or I'm not worthy. So I know that obviously I have a lot of processing to still do, but I think the combo of all of those things has been like really, really hard. So I do not want to cry on the podcast.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to cry too. Like, it's
been like so much harder than I thought. So yeah, I think like for me personally, like I think the last like couple of months have been like a true rock bottom that I wasn't expecting. I know that like I will figure it out and I have confidence in myself that I will, but it's just like going through it has been really hard.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's like, it's a lot. And like, just to kind of frame this too, because you talked about like, oh, I would like found out that I was going to be losing my job. Like the 3 pillars in life, I always think about that like kind of provide stability for us, like professional work, relationships, and then kind of your like health or your physical. Like you kind of had all of those without warning, like taken from you. Like it's not an easy thing to be like, I'm starting over and this was not part of the plan.
Yeah.
What do you do if that happens to you? Because I think like it's devastating.
Honestly, where I've been like leaning on things right now is I'm like trying to eat as well as I can and working out every single day and like feeling good in my body when I feel like everything else is so out of control. So that has been probably my anchor. And I also stopped drinking. I'm kind of cutting out carbs and like I feel like good and strong in my body. And I'm like noticing progress. Like I signed up for Gold's Gym in LA, which is like the bodybuilder like mecca. I just saw Arnold Schwarzenegger today there. So I like love going there. And I'm like, all right, I at least know I'm making one small step in like the right direction for my health. So I'm viewing like 2026 as like, all right, I'm just going to try a bunch of experiments. I know I can always go back to a corporate job. I know I have a skill set in finance, investor relations, marketing, operations. I've been working for 13 years. Like I know I have skills, but I genuinely want to find something that lights me up where I'm also making enough money to live and like scale that. But like that truly makes my heart just fucking like ride. Like I know it's possible. I'm surrounded by people that do have that. Like I look at my sister, who was the last episode we just did, and my sister like wakes up so pumped up about her fund in venture capital. And I'm like, I know it's there. And the only way I know I can find that is by just viewing life as these like experiments. So I think that's kind of where like hitting like the rock bottom. I mean, the tools that I've like leaned on is like therapy being one, talking to like my friends and family. My dad has been really helpful. My parents, my sister. I'm still really good friends with like a lot of my coworkers that I was working with. And so talking through things with them and like them like kind of asking for my advice on things, it's made me feel less like a failure. I think it's easy to think like you lose your job, you failed. Don't have like a steady income, like you're a failure. You lose your visa to work in the country that you've wanted to work in, you're a failure. You lose your green card, failure. You lose your boyfriend, failure. At a time when like I would fucking love, sorry, I'm swearing so much. I would love to like be married and have kids. So I'm just like positive that there's better days ahead and that like I also will find someone that is ready for like certain things in life that I'm also ready for. Timeline is so important. So I think right now it's just like I'm optimistic that this is like a point in time, but this is like not my final destination.
Right. And what you were talking about with like reaching out to friends and all those things, like although you're going through it right now, I don't think like your situation is unique in that like there's times of, I don't know if like I've been through a personal experience similar to this, which I'll talk about in another episode where I was like, my life is fucking over. Like it's done. Like I had a similar situation at my job. I thought I was safe. The day before the acquisition, they called me and told me, surprise, you're getting fired. I was like, and being in a place where you're losing your job when you can't live in the country is, it's like soul crushing. And then there's no way to not feel like a failure. And I think like when you're talking about some of the things that you helped get you through those moments, like my go-to was always, I'm going to run away. I'm going to move to a new country. I'm going to get a new boyfriend. I'm going to do these things. And I had to like kind of consciously train myself to be like, okay, I have to sit with the discomfort of this. How can I use some of the tools from therapy or whatever to be like, this doesn't define me. And this will not define like if I'm a success or I'm a failure just because something bad has happened.
Totally. You're like, so you're tested when you fail or when you feel like you failed, but it really is just building resilience. And it's like, if I want to build my own company, I'm going to get rejection every single day. I'm going to feel like I failed probably every single day. And it's like, this is just like building that muscle of like resilience. Doesn't mean that it doesn't suck in the moment though.
I think that's such a big part of it because like oftentimes I will just skip through some of like the dark times that I've had and talk about my accomplishments, but it's really those times that actually allowed me to learn that I could be successful. And I think it's so easy to just like people talk about their accomplishments or you see them on Instagram or whatever. And you're like, wow, they've made it. They don't really talk about, well, hey, my life had to get blown up in order for me to get here. And so I think it's like really important. And what we're trying to do is kind of share some of how do we navigate through the uncertainty? How do you navigate through like still believing in yourself when the whole world is telling you like you're not worthy?
Totally. I think typically when something like this would happen, my knee-jerk reaction would be to rush into the next thing. Knee-jerk reaction, apply for 1,000 jobs, reach out to every person under the sun to get a new visa and to keep my job, to keep a job and live in the United States, to like rush. And that's like historically what I've done. By the way, this is not like the first time that something like this has happened. I have had previous visa denials and I did previously lose one of my jobs. So this does weirdly feel a little bit familiar, but I do know that in those cases, I ended up in a better place than with that happening at the end of the day than if it never happened. But in this case, in this circumstance, my approach has been a lot different. I mean, I'm taking things much slower. Truly, like the last month, I've been processing, like planning out the business that I'm going to be running. I don't know where I'm going to be running it from quite yet, but it's been like more thoughtful. And I also spent a lot of time just processing like the end of the relationship and being sad and like crying and feeling the emotions instead of just like avoiding it and just jumping into like a bunch of dates or whatnot. I just don't feel like I went on a couple and I was like, I don't feel it.
I want to ask a question about that because like when I think back similarly to my younger self, I'm like, the new me would be quite different than how the old me would have behaved. Like, what are some of the things that you've like learned or how have you like changed and grown? You talked about Hoffman. How has that influenced you being able to kind of like more calmly process what's happened to you and like move forward?
Yeah. Hoffman is all about feeling the feelings. So expressing them, expressing in the form of shouting and yelling and like punching a pillow and writing things down and journaling and really like feeling the emotion as opposed to keeping it like in the background. Because if you don't deal with it, it will pop up in other places. Instead of avoiding, it's confronting your issues and your feelings like right up front. So that's been more of my approach this time around. And just, I have an album on my phone where I had this actually before. I think I talked about it in a prior episode, the Poverty Sarah album. And I'm just like any low point, I'm just snapping pics. And I know I'll look back on it. I'll be like, all right, wow, I got through that and I'm fine.
I think there is such beauty in being able to, like when you prove to yourself that you're going to be okay and you have an experience of being like a time when you thought you couldn't move forward, but you're okay. Like I had to learn that myself and being like, oh, you know, even if I don't move when I'm going through like extreme heartbreak and like loss of job, there's an ability for me to stay and actually physically be okay. Like I didn't die, as an example.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
just the thought of being like, oh, I'm still alive. Like I think sometimes our brains trick us into thinking that something worse is going to happen. Like because our identities, like my identity is wrapped in my job. If I lose my job, who am I? I'm not even a person anymore. And like trying to figure that out to be somebody that isn't defined by these things that can be, essentially taken away from you at any given
Yeah.
moment has at least been important for me. So
Yeah, it's been 3 weeks since I've been out of a job, and I like have questioned my identity so many times since then. So to your point, it doesn't define you, but there's definitely a point where you're not in the job and you're like, "Oh, wow. Yeah, this is not where I work anymore. This is not where I'm going to the office. Like I can't tell anyone I'm doing XYZ." I'm not going to like sugarcoat it and say like I've resolved everything. Like I do feel like still extremely anxious, and I don't exactly know what the path forward totally looks like. I run anxious. So I used to be on Prozac. I went off of it 2 years ago, and I'm hopeful to not go back on it. But there's been a lot of times in this process that I'm like, whew, do I go back on it? Because the anxiety is like really high. Typically, it's like around bedtime. I mean, there's definitely the feeling of like loneliness. I mean, like my apartment by myself. But then, I mean, like last night, for instance, like I felt so anxious, and it was literally at 9:30, and I was like, I'm going to Gold. I'm going to spend an hour on the treadmill and just listen to a Mel
wow.
Robbins podcast, and that'll make me feel better. I went to the gym. There was still a lot of people there because it closes at 11. And I mean, I felt so much better today. So it's like little things like that. But in the
Right.
moment, you're like, you just feel like frozen. So I definitely like don't have all the answers, but I mean, it's kind of like making like little tiny steps like every single day to move forward. So I have been really thinking about what am I going to do to make money, and where am I going to live, and is it going to be in the US? Am I going to move to London, and is it going to be Toronto? For the first like the last 3 weeks I've been just like overwhelmed with that decision. Like
Right.
what do I even choose? How do I choose it? Yesterday I made the decision to incorporate my business in the US.
Right.
So I will be using the US as an anchor, and my goal as of right now is to fund my own visa for the United States. However, it will take me some time to get there. And I also want to make sure it's a viable business, a business that has great momentum, that is operating and has the ability to scale. And so I will be taking time outside of the US as I'm like experimenting with different business models, finding clients, and I will be spending time in the UK for a couple of months as like a test run. At first I was like, okay, well what if I just move to the UK, get a 3-year work visa, which I do qualify for, which is great, but that just felt so daunting, and that's where I was getting stuck. I was getting stuck in this like permanence. And I realized like I need to view things as shorter, like little experiments. Why don't I just go for a couple months? No big deal. Why don't I just spend a couple months with my family in Toronto? No big deal. I think there's like some thought like, oh, well, then how am I going to meet my partner and where am I going to live? But I think truly right now, with all these things going on, my energy is best spent on myself as I'm navigating these things, with the hope that like my person will find each other on the journey, as opposed to like truly searching.
Yeah, that makes sense though, like the way you described it as an anchor, because I think a lot
Yeah.
of other things, it's tough, right? When you're in a position where you're lucky because you can do so many things, but at the same time, you're like, what am I going to do? Like you almost have too many options. Like that
Totally.
paradox of choice thing, it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
Because, what about people who actually don't have any options? Like they have no ability to move, they can't do anything. Like I think it's so tricky, and I've been there too. And like the default for me was always like, oh, just go get whatever someone's giving to you, as opposed to
Yeah.
proactively being like, oh my gosh, what do I want? As opposed to just taking this because I feel like that's the best option that's going to come to me right now.
Totally.
So
Totally.
like tell me a little bit more about like the E2 visa. Like how did you come up with that? And what does that essentially mean for you?
Yeah. So the E2 is an investor visa for the United States. It's a 5-year visa. And it's for those that are willing to invest in the US economy. The amount of money that you invest depends on your business model and depends on your business. But essentially, you're creating jobs for Americans.
Okay.
But it does give you the ability to work and live in the US. And also, you're funding it yourself. So you're not relying on a employer. If something were to happen with your job, like you're going to be out of a job. The risk with it, I would say, is that it's with non-immigrant intent. So it means that you can't apply to a green card like right away. I still would probably need to get married, but I also am unwilling to get married just for the green card. I want to do it the right way. But it does give 5 years. And in that time, many things can happen in 5 years. But I also will be spending more time outside of the country in London and Toronto. I'm using this year as like truly an experiment and giving myself 12 months to do all the things I've always wanted to do, but I didn't do because I was like tethered to an employer or too scared or just like frankly didn't have the balls to like go after. So this is like, yeah, the year of experimentation. And the key is though, to like when something isn't working, to actually like pull the brakes on it and trust that there's something better coming or that I can find something better, because I typically like double down when something isn't working. So I'm saying this here on this podcast as accountability to pull the brakes if something isn't working. But that's where I'm at.
I want to talk about that idea a little bit more, because there's so many things that we talked about, like moving to a new place or finding a new job or saying like, fuck it, I'm going to go do my year of experimentation, like hold myself to it. It's hard to leave something when it's what you have. Like, so for example, I have like a good job. I'm very comfortable. And even if it wasn't like hypothetically fulfilling my soul and setting myself on fire, like I hear what you're saying and I'm like, wow, she is so like, she's got balls. Like it's really difficult to actually do that, especially if you're not like forced into it. Do you have any thoughts around like how you build that kind of like courage to go do something like that? Because it's tough.
I will say when you've lost everything, you have nothing left to lose. Like I have no option that I'm willing to choose than to go all in on myself. Like I've lost all the things that I was holding on to. Like, why not? So there's that. But there's also like the saying of like no B+ life. And I think a B+ life is a very dangerous place to be because it's not an A or an A+, but it's also not so bad that you're willing to change. Yeah. And I think I am truly aspiring for an A+ life and I don't want B+. So I think just knowing in my gut that I can find something that's more aligned to what I really want. And then to even know what you want, it's like getting really clear. And that takes doing the work, like journaling, writing out what your goals are, writing out what your manifestations are. I just took like a manifestation course and I am getting like very clear on all the things that I want. And right now they feel so far away. Right. The monetary goals are so far away. The like dream life and partner and house, like definitely feels far away. But I remember hearing about this on, I think, a Mel Robbins podcast, who I'm tripling down on right now. And she said that you are one decision away from the life that you want. And I do think that there is truth to that. So I think it's just wanting better for myself and wanting, I mean, when it comes to like a partner, it's like, it is timeline and it is so important. Like you can have all the love in the world, but the love might not be enough. Like the love is just not enough if you're not on the same timeline. Right. So I think like accepting that and wanting something better, not better, wanting something that's like more aligned. So I'm trying to take more aligned action and cut my losses where I need to.
I like something you had said earlier too about going all in because you know that you have some of the skills that like, you know what your life was like before, so you could always go back to that. Mm-hmm. Like, I think some of these decisions feel like, I'll use a Jeff Bezos term, like a one-way door decision versus like a two-way. And so one way is something you like can't come back from versus two-way, it's always able to come back. So, and I think about that too, like, it's not like you could not get another job. Like you've had interviews, you've had offers, but the risk of being like, okay, I'm actually going to take the risk to go through this door and do the two-way door decision, that is still a hurdle to overcome. But
It
it's
totally
like sometimes the risk is actually not as big as we think it is, but our brains tell us it is this big, scary thing. We're going to leave everything behind. It's like, oh shit, if we actually fail, maybe we can just go back to the way that life was before. And that's okay as well.
totally, totally. I agree with that. I mean, I know I can always get another job. I think that's my backup plan is
Right.
get another job. That's the backup plan. But if I give myself 1 year to try and build something, if it doesn't work out, I'll go back to a job and that's that. But
Right.
I feel like also a lot of things are built on momentum, right? So you take the one step, you incorporate the business, you take the next step, you open the bank account, and then you're like, all right, well, it's live. One thing that's good about this E2 visa is it's forcing me to get the business up and running
Right. You have
ASAP,
to.
right? So I don't know if I want to live forever in the US, but I know that I want to have a business that's growing and thriving. And I also need to make money to live. So it's like, let's just like get that started. But I will say it took me like almost 4 months to decide that I was going to do this. So it did take time. I feel far less rushed now that I have made the decision. Whereas before it was like, oh my God, I'm losing my job. What am I going to do? Should I apply to all these jobs? Like, should I do this? Should I do that? There's like the shoulds. But it's like, what do I really want? And I really needed to spend time thinking through what it is. Like, what do I actually want to say in 5 years I have accomplished?
Right.
And at the end of the day, it is building something on my own. So I need to at least give it a fair shot. And it's at a time where I don't have dependents. I am on my own. And it's like my worst case is I'm living in my dad's basement for a couple months, getting things up and running because I am spending every single dollar on the business, which by the way, might end up happening. And I
Right.
at first was like, oh no, that sounds bad. But it's like, you do what you got to do. And yeah, I'm 34. Yeah, I'm like at an age where like maybe most people are not doing that, and that is going to be very uncomfortable. But at this point I like truly believe I have nothing to lose
Yeah.
because what's going to happen? I just like fail,
The,
like whatever.
the most
Whatever.
the most successful people that I know personally in my life have had like serious rock bottom moments. And that
Yeah.
like kind of reckless ambition of being like, I have nothing to lose. I don't give a fuck. I'm going to go balls to the wall. Like,
Yeah.
I think that it's a lot more powerful than being golden handcuffed to normalcy. And like, when you're pushed into a corner, like, how do you handle it and how do you act? Right. So
Totally.
I think like the momentum piece is huge. Like you talked a lot in this podcast about like moving steps forward and like just taking one step, getting up, doing that thing. What's
Yeah.
kind of like next for you? What are you thinking right now?
Finding ways to make money in this business and
Yeah.
figuring out what is it that I'm going to do to make money. I genuinely like don't have the answers. I have some ideas. I have experience doing marketing ops, IR, event production, soup to nuts event production. How that's going to look, where that's going to land, who knows? But I got to just start trying, and the time is now to try. So
Right.
yeah, what's next is like moving a little bit forward every single day. And when I look at the big picture, it's easy to just get like so overwhelmed. Like, oh my
Right.
God, job, visa, partner, money, location. Like, I just want to like sink in that because it's like you want to just like cry and just be under your covers and just like not leave your bed, which by the way, like that happened a couple days, but it's like no one's coming to save you. I am the only person that can save myself. I'm the only person that can get myself out of this. I don't have like a trust fund waiting for me that I can like fall back on. I don't have like someone that's going to come and save me. It's like we don't have anyone that's coming to save you. I have to save myself. So I'm saying all this to like really also keep myself accountable to ensure that I really execute on it. So like transparently, my financial goals are to make the same amount of money that I did this past year in growth equity in my business year one. Not sure how it's going to happen yet, but that's the goal.
It's gonna happen.
And then I have like very high financial goals going forward after that. And let's just like see if it works. So yeah, I'm going all in, and I definitely know I'm probably seem like rah and like truly feel like I'm still like a wounded bird and definitely dealing with things like day by day. And I'm probably crying every single day still, but it is what it is. Like all I can do is just move forward.
Well, first, I think you're very strong and you know this and you're very brave. So I've got your back if you need anything. Like I don't doubt anything that you're going to do because I know when you set your mind to it, I'm like, she's going to make it happen one way or another. And then I think the other thing was, you sharing this exposes the fact that there's so many things that we can see about everyone's success and how it is, but the journey of going through it and not having things figured out, like I appreciate you sharing that because a lot of the times, like we just don't know what to do. It's like, I don't know how to move forward. I haven't figured it out. So, maybe we can talk again in the future when you're further down along your journey because you've exposed for us where you're at right now. And I think that's really powerful because there aren't answers all the time. Like that's part of the journey.
Yeah. I think where I'll end this is like, I have deliberately taken time to be making these decisions instead of just rushing to the next job, which I do think is also a bit of a privilege too, right? But I know that for me to be the happiest version of myself, I really need to think through and try these like mini experiments to see what works and like pivot. And if I can give like any advice that's been the most helpful for me is like just taking things slower, moving things forward a little bit every day, but not just like making a quick decision without thinking it through. And also just like taking the time to process the emotions. I think these things, when they feel like they're happening, you feel like your world is ending. And it kind of is, right? I'm not going to butter it up and say it isn't. But the key for me is just truly taking the time to like, and I'm still obviously going through it. So it's like day by day and just feeling the emotions.
That's a good way to end it. We're going to stop there. If you guys have questions for Sarah or myself, like please let us know. And Sarah, thank you for sharing your journey. Like truly, I think it's a hard thing to do. So I know like I appreciate it. I'm sure our listeners were, and it was great. So thank you.
Thank you. And our only call to action is truly just please share this with 3 friends. We greatly appreciate it. We're new to this. We're learning and growing. But we would love if you could share this episode with someone you think would need it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to the Career Capital Collective podcast with Sarah Robson and Kaylee Gaspari.
We hope you feel inspired and empowered to take charge of your career and build the life you truly want. Follow us on Instagram at Career Capital Collective.